Germany has long been the powerhouse of Europe, and its economy is largely driven by world-leading automobile companies like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz. In fact, for years, these auto giants were the symbol of innovation and top-class German engineering. But the engine is now starting to slow down. Massive layoffs, factory closures, and rising competition are shaking the very foundation of Germany's industrial strength.
The European Central Bank has cut rates for the third time this year, down another quarter of a point. This comes as the European economy is stagnating, but inflation fears.
Europe once ruled the world, not just literally in terms of its colonies, but in market share. It manufactured everything and sold it to the world. It was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. However, recent reports highlight a significant decline in Europe's manufacturing sector to such a level that factories are shutting down and shifting to other continents. But how did that happen, and is it true that the era of European manufacturing dominance and superiority is over? If so, what are the reasons and what more is waiting for Europe? In this video, let's find out. For Europe, everything was going great and as planned until Russia launched its special military operation in Ukraine. Determined to stand firm, the European Union imposed 10 rounds of sanctions aimed at crippling Russia's economy. In retaliation, Russia weaponized its energy exports, leveraging Europe's heavy dependence on Russian gas as a tool of coercion. You should know that Europe had developed industries on the back of cheaper gas coming from Russia, which had been coming for decades.
It's difficult for Russia because Russia is also dependent on Europe and also on the customers. Russia has to sell its gas. 60 to 70% of the budget of the federal state budget in Russia are dependent on the revenues from gas. So they have to sell and Europe has to buy. It's a double dependency. It's another story for Ukraine. Ukraine is not buying gas anymore from Russia. It's now getting its gas actually from Western Europe. But Ukraine is dependent on the fees it charges for gas transport via the pipelines running through Ukraine and Russia.
However, Russia proved it did not need the European market to sell its gas, depriving European factories of the very fuel that ran them. Yet Europe held its ground, cutting gas consumption by 13%, diversifying energy sources, and implementing sweeping austerity measures. While these efforts helped Europe narrowly avoid a recession, the costs were staggering. Energy prices surged, eroding the competitiveness of European industries and plunging households into economic hardship. What began as a geopolitical conflict turned into a fierce economic battle, fought not with weapons, but with pipelines and sanctions. And for Europe, the risks for deindustrialization increased.
The war in Ukraine and the energy crisis have directly impacted our economies and our citizens. It's time to act. Kicking the can further down the road is no longer an option.
The energy crisis of 2022 struck at the heart of Europe's industrial base. Natural gas prices, critical to energy-intensive industries, soared to unprecedented levels. Factories that once thrived on affordable energy suddenly faced unsustainable costs. Steel mills, chemical plants, and automotive factories, pillars of Europe's industrial economy, bore the brunt. Rising production costs forced factory owners into impossible choices: absorb crushing losses or shut down entirely. Many opted for the latter, triggering a wave of closures and layoffs. Even in Germany, the industrial powerhouse of Europe, energy-heavy sectors teetered on the brink of collapse.
Germany, it's a byword for car manufacturing, but today, Volkswagen has issued a warning that has people wondering whether it has reached the end of the road as an industrial powerhouse. At a special meeting of the workforce at its headquarters, VW executives told employees that the company may have to close factories in Germany if it's to survive a huge slump in car sales. The competition from Chinese car makers and a failure to innovate in electric car technology has left them chasing the pack. So, what does that mean for Made in Germany?
Beyond the skyrocketing costs, the reliability of energy supplies became a pressing concern. Factories cannot function in an environment of uncertainty, and the volatile energy market creates a climate of instability. What was once a thriving industrial sector has been reduced to a shadow of its former self, with the noise of machinery replaced by silence. Despite these challenges, Europe displayed remarkable strength in managing the energy crisis. Through a mix of strategic adaptation, innovation, and some luck, the continent managed to stave off a complete collapse. Gas consumption was cut dramatically through efficiency measures, a greater reliance on renewables and coal, and behavioral changes among households and businesses. Liquefied natural gas imports from the United States, Qatar, and Nigeria filled much of the void left by Russian pipelines. In fact, the US LNG exports to Europe doubled in a single year, highlighting the growing reliance on international partnerships. Yet, even as sanctions were enforced, Russian LNG continued to find its way to Europe indirectly through intermediaries like India and China, exposing the complexities of enforcing such measures. The delayed reopening of China's economy also provided an unexpected advantage, easing global competition for LNG and allowing Europe to stockpile reserves. While these measures helped avert an immediate energy collapse, the high cost of survival left deep scars. European industries were battered, consumers faced steep bills, and the economic outlook dimmed. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now. Today, the legacy of economic decline and deindustrialization in Europe remains. High energy costs have eroded the competitiveness of European goods on the global market, leaving key sectors like steel, chemicals, and automotive manufacturing struggling to compete. Companies such as Germany's BASF have begun shifting their focus to markets in the US and China, where operating costs are lower. Energy-intensive facilities, like aluminum smelters, have permanently shut their doors, leaving a void that may never be filled. Inflation, driven by soaring energy prices, has further compounded the issue, reducing consumer purchasing power and lowering living standards by an estimated 5%. Wealth has flowed out of Europe to energy-exporting nations such as Qatar and the United States, leaving the continent with what European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde described as lost money that may never be recovered. Complicating matters further is Europe's ambitious goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. While the transition to clean energy is vital, it comes with immense costs for industries already on the brink. Aluminum production, critical for renewable energy infrastructure, is projected to increase by 25% by 2030. Yet European smelters are shutting down at alarming rates due to unsustainable energy costs. Factories that produce solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries, the backbone of Europe's green transition, are among the most energy-intensive, and many are struggling to remain viable. Without a stable industrial base, Europe risks outsourcing its green ambitions to global competitors like China, undermining its strategic goals and further weakening its economic independence. The global marketplace has only added to Europe's woes. The United States, through its Inflation Reduction Act, has implemented sweeping subsidies for clean energy industries, making it a more attractive destination for investment. Europe, by contrast, has struggled to present a unified and competitive response, leaving its industries at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, China's vast manufacturing capacity and lower production costs continue to undercut European industries. For instance, European imports of Chinese aluminum nearly doubled between 2021 and 2022, showing the continent's growing dependence on foreign suppliers. This reliance on imports is eroding Europe's self-reliance and accelerating the decline of its factories.
Scores of Chinese manufacturers are now scouting the European Union in order to produce. We have seen with the latest visit by the President Xi Jinping that BID has announced that they are going to manufacture in Hungary. Chery is also announcing manufacturing in Spain and some other countries. So I think that the Chinese manufacturers don't really need to go to Turkey in order to do it. They will go straight to the European Union. In that case, they will avoid, or they will try to avoid all kinds of tariffs.
We want a level playing field for our companies. And what we see is massive subsidies in the EV sector in China, which is, of course, unleveling our playing field. And we do not accept this in the internal market for our companies. So we do also not accept it for Chinese companies.
The COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing geopolitical tensions have further exposed the fragility of Europe's supply chains. Dependence on critical imports, such as semiconductors and rare earth metals, leaves factories vulnerable to disruption. A single bottleneck can halt production across multiple industries, creating a chain reaction throughout the economy. At the same time, Europe lags behind in innovation. While the United States and China pour billions into advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and automation, Europe is hamstrung by bureaucratic delays and limited funding. Without significant investments in cutting-edge technology, Europe risks falling further behind in the global race for industrial dominance. Exacerbating these challenges is a lack of decisive leadership. Unlike the United States, which has adopted bold and coordinated policies to support its industries, Europe's response has been fragmented and sluggish. Member states often prioritize national agendas over collective action, leaving the EU struggling to act as a cohesive force.
There's no point in trying to sugarcoat it. Germany, once admired for its efficiency, seems stuck in a state of permanent crisis and has to watch as almost all its neighbors overtake it in key areas such as growth and innovation. Germany's problems are fundamental.
It's not just a German problem, because Germany is by far the most important economy in Europe, and when Germany suffers, as it does at the moment, so does the rest of Europe. So it does have consequences. If you look since 2019, actually the Eurozone has been remarkably resilient, except for Germany. So if you look at the growth rates in other countries, including sort of surprising countries like Spain and Greece, they've actually been quite robust, except for Germany, which has hardly grown at all since 2019. So many problems actually predate the pandemic. Some problems, such as the energy price shock, geopolitical uncertainty, are not of Germany's making. But then there are many homemade ones, like the failure to invest in digital infrastructure, the failure to invest in physical infrastructure, this obsession with a debt brake, all these things. Germany,
The latest data from Eurostat paints a sobering picture of the Eurozone's industrial sector, showing that hopes for a long-awaited recovery remain elusive. Germany, the largest economy in the Eurozone, bore the heaviest burden, with industrial output contracting by 2.7% month-on-month. France and Italy also reported declines, however, less pronounced. Capital goods production suffered the most significant setbacks, while energy output also declined. While some industries posted modest gains, these were insufficient to offset the broader downturn.
The bottom line is that after 2 years of solid expansion, the world economy is growing more slowly than expected, and risks are rising. But even as the economy continues to move ahead, as I said, it is facing significantly higher risks, some of them actually related to policy. And these risks are increasingly intertwined. Now, does that mean that a global recession is around the corner? No. But the risk of a sharper decline in global growth has certainly increased. Add to this the uncertainty, the geopolitical worries, and disappointing long-term growth prospect, and you have an economic picture with a pretty clear message. And the message is the following. For policymakers, address remaining vulnerabilities and be ready if a serious...
In stark contrast, manufacturing activity in the United States and China is experiencing a modest rebound. China's recovery has been driven by stimulus measures and a rush to export goods ahead of potential tariffs from incoming US President Donald Trump. These efforts have invigorated Chinese factories, allowing them to post their fastest expansion in 5 months. Similarly, in the United States, manufacturing activity saw growth in new orders for the first time in 8 months, signaling cautious optimism among producers. Although the US sector remains in slight contraction territory, the improvement has raised hopes for a gradual recovery, bolstered by the post-election industrial uptick that often follows major political transitions. Back in the Eurozone, the situation looks far less promising. Germany's manufacturing sector remains deeply entrenched in contraction, while France experienced its steepest decline in new orders since the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. This grim trend reflects not just weak demand from external markets, but also faltering domestic consumption, further dampening the outlook. At the same time, other countries are filling the gap left by Europe. Even Europe itself is dependent on China. In Asia, China's manufacturing sector has shown strong growth, spurred by a surge in export orders and government stimulus measures. This recovery has had ripple effects on other Asian manufacturing hubs, such as South Korea and Taiwan, where production activity has also improved. Trade tensions are another significant headwind for the Eurozone. Proposed tariffs by the incoming Trump administration have already prompted a rush of export orders from Chinese manufacturers, further exacerbating the competitive pressures faced by European producers. A Reuters poll suggests that these tariffs could deepen the Eurozone's economic woes by making its goods less competitive in global markets. What do you think? Will Europe ever be able to recover and get its lost glory back from countries like China? Or should Europe have to accept the hard reality and try its luck in another economic sector, leaving manufacturing for China? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on whether Europe is in decline and its era of prosperity is over. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.